I never imagined that the bond between my dad and me would grow into something so intense and complicated. My name is Emily Carter, and I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My dad, James Carter, was a single parent after my mom passed away when I was just 6 years old. From the very beginning, my dad became my world. He wasn't just a father. He was my mentor, my friend, and the person I trusted the most. Growing up, I watched him work tirelessly as a carpenter. He had rough, calloused hands, but they were gentle when he held me or brushed my hair back. People often commented on how much I looked like my dad, how my hazel eyes mirrored his, and how my smile was almost identical. I loved the idea of being like him, not just in appearance but in character. When I was in high school, things began to change subtly. I was 17, and James was in his mid-40s. Our relationship, always close, started to feel different. It wasn't anything overt or inappropriate at first, but I noticed the little things. How he lingered a bit longer when he hugged me, the way his hand would brush against mine when he handed me a plate of food, or how his gaze seemed to study me in a way that made me uncomfortable but also oddly aware of myself. I tried to push the thoughts away, telling myself I was overreacting. After all, it was just a close father-daughter bond, right? But as time went on, our closeness became harder to define. After my first heartbreak, it was James who stayed up all night with me on my bedroom floor, talking me through my tears and comforting me in a way that no friend ever had. It wasn't just emotional support. It was a presence that made me feel safe and seen in ways I didn't even understand. I began to notice that I craved his attention more than anyone else's, and when he looked at me, it sent a strange warmth through my chest that I couldn't explain. By the time I went to college in another city, I thought distance would clarify my feelings. I wanted to tell myself that the unusual attachment I felt was just my dependency on him, nothing more. But our conversations over the phone often turned into hours of shared secrets, laughter, and confessions. I found myself sharing things I never told my friends. My insecurities, my dreams, the shame I carried about my first failed relationship. And James, in turn, shared his own regrets and fears. I realized I loved him in a way I shouldn't, and the realization scared me more than anything. One summer, I returned home after my sophomore year. I hadn't seen him in months, and the longing to be close to him was almost unbearable. The first night I was back, we stayed up late on the porch, drinking iced tea and watching the fireflies flicker in the yard. The air was thick with that awkward tension I'd been trying to ignore. He reached over to brush a strand of hair from my face, and the simple gesture sent a shiver through me. I caught his eyes, and for a moment I thought he might feel it too. But then he pulled back and laughed, and I told myself I was imagining it. Despite my efforts, the tension didn't go away. One evening, after helping him fix a loose step on the back porch, I accidentally touched his hand. His reaction was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to ignite a flame inside me that I could not extinguish. I knew what I felt was forbidden, yet the emotional intensity between us was undeniable. I began to write it off as a fleeting crush, a dangerous illusion caused by years of dependence. Still, every interaction seemed to intensify the feelings I couldn't name. I started dating a guy named Ryan in college, thinking that would anchor me to a normal path. But no matter how much I tried, I found myself thinking of James in moments I should have been thinking about Ryan. I didn't act on it, but the thoughts were persistent and consuming. I felt guilty, ashamed, and terrified that anyone would ever discover what I was feeling. It wasn't until my last year of college that a turning point came. James called me late one night, his voice unusually tense. He had been diagnosed with a serious heart condition, and the fear of losing him shook me to my core. I rushed home immediately. For days, I stayed by his side in the hospital, holding his hand through procedures, sitting in the sterile rooms as he rested. Seeing him vulnerable, hearing him confess his fears, I realized that my feelings for him had evolved into something much more complicated than love or admiration. It was a desperate longing to be part of him, to have some permanence in his life. One night, alone in the hospital room, he fell asleep in my arms after a long day of tests. I sat there, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest, my emotions a tangled mess. I wanted to tell him, to confess everything, but the words would never come. I couldn't risk destroying the relationship that meant more to me than life itself. I made a silent vow. This secret would die with me. After he recovered, I moved back home permanently to help him. Our life together returned to its familiar rhythm, filled with laughter, chores, and quiet evenings. The unspoken truth remained, buried under layers of care, devotion, and routine. Every time I hugged him, every time we shared a moment alone, I felt the weight of the secret I could never tell. Yet paradoxically, I also felt gratitude for his guidance, for the safety of his presence, and for the depth of love we shared, even if it could never be fully named. Years passed. I found work in the city nearby, developed friendships, and even started dating again. But no one could ever replace the connection I had with my dad. It was a love that existed in the shadows, complex and morally impossible, yet undeniable in its intensity. I never acted on it, never crossed the line, and I never will. It remains my secret, a part of me that shapes who I am but remains hidden from the world. I often sit on the porch where we spent so many evenings, thinking about how much I love him and how that love is different from anything anyone else could understand. It's a bittersweet truth, a paradox of devotion and restraint. Our bond is unbreakable, built on years of shared life and unwavering trust. And though the nature of my feelings will never be spoken aloud, I know they are safe within the unspoken understanding between us. This is the story of my dad and me. A story of love that is pure, complicated, and secret. It is a love that shaped me, that taught me about loyalty, protection, and emotional intimacy. And though I can never share it with anyone, it remains the defining thread of my life, a hidden truth that will remain with me forever.